Attention, everyone. We're going to get started. It's working.
All right.
Okay, that was Lindsay Fowler. She is the co-chair of Women in Architecture. Welcome, everybody. On behalf of AIA Triangle Women in Architecture Task Force, we are thrilled to sponsor this evening's welcome reception. Please, I hope everyone's eating. Along with Catherine Hogan of Catherine Hogan Architects. She'll speak here in a minute and introduce Débora Mesa. A little bit about Women in Architecture, WIA. We seek to provide opportunities for women in architectural careers from early professional development, mentoring, networking. We happily include not only architects, but architecture-adjacent professions, many of whom we work with on projects or within our design community events just like this, supporting our local community. Our goal is to empower female architects, and as I mentioned, in all stages of their career. We have an event just about every month of the year. Check us out on Instagram, WIA_triangle, or through the local AIA website, through our Women in Architecture Task Force, and also Friday Facts. Thanks again, and look forward to a great night.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to begin by saying thank you to Situ Studio for their efforts to bring such high-quality lecture series to our place. Without them, we would not have this opportunity to learn from both local leaders and international voices. It's imperative that we're inspired to grow as a city and as architects. With that said, it's an honor to introduce this evening Débora Mesa. Débora is a leader in Ensamble Studio, a cross-disciplinary architecture office founded in 2000 and based in Madrid. Balancing imagination and reality, art and science, their work innovates typologies, technologies, and methodologies. Their contributions to the theory and practice of architecture have been recognized internationally. I have looked at Débora firm for inspiration over many years. Their practice methodology is incredibly unique, and I know that you'll find their beautiful and inventive projects inspiring as Débora presents them this evening. I wanted to share with you a few excerpts from the Ensamble Studio Manifesto, because I think they really resonated with me. And these are their words. We think with our hands, we experience. We seek to control the processes more accurately than the results, because finding the logic in the development makes it harder to be wrong. And above all, we do, and if we make mistakes, we learn, but the perseverance in doing keeps us alive. If we do not have work, we invent it. I just think that's wonderful. Please welcome Débora to the stage.
Well, thank you very much, Catherine, for the introduction and for the support of this lecture. Thank you so much, In Situ Studio, Zach and Matt, for walking or driving me in Raleigh, for bringing me here in front of all of you. And of course, thank you for coming and showing this interest and sharing this moment together to talk about architecture. I want to bring you on a journey through the work that we do in the office. And I'll get this started. It's going to be a very audiovisual journey. Where I will share with you, yes, some of the process of design, but mostly how we strive to bring ideas into reality. And I want to focus on this exercise of the physical reality of things, especially today that we live so wrapped and so trapped in digital worlds. I think really it's very relevant for the architect to be present in the doing, to know how to do, and to know how to translate those big ideas that we are able to have into real places that people can enjoy and that make good use of the resources that we have. So for us, it's always been very important from the beginning to learn about materials, to learn about processes of construction, especially when we started architecture and we had no idea at all on how to build buildings. But we luckily had opportunities working in Spain as local architects. We could access competitions, we could win those competitions and then be able to build the buildings with very low budgets. So it was very important to learn how to make the best of those budgets. And this took us in our very early projects where we had to build with stone by code. It took us to the quarries where we wanted to learn about the origin of materials, and we wanted to learn beyond the catalogs of products that we can all use as architects to prescribe certain products. We wanted to know where this material was coming from. And it was an incredible experience that totally influenced what the projects we built in this northern area of Spain, in Galicia, what they turned out to be. And beyond the projects, what was really impactful for us was to learn how our decisions as architects are impacting landscapes that sometimes are very remote, and we don't need, we do not know, but we should be knowing about. This is probably 2006, so almost 20 years ago, 18 years ago. At the time, the discourse on the ecological footprint and the circularity of materials was not so present. But still, we had this intuition that it was important to be accountable for the decisions that we were making. So actually visiting the quarry, getting to know the work of the quarry people and the material inspired this one of the projects where we decided to use not the finely cut stones, but really the spare material that is the leftover of the industrial process. So the quarry was filled with these very regular pieces of rock that were meant to be crushed and turned into gravel, but we decided to build a monumental structural wall that would make the main facade of the building. The building was a cultural center, a center for authors, for artists in Santiago de Compostela, in the north of Spain. As I mentioned before, we had to build with local stone, and we decided to work hand in hand with the quarry owners to recycle the material and turn it into one big part of the building, and then transport it to the final site. Something that at the time we thought made total sense, let's take this material, let's use it for the building, was really difficult to implement because what made total sense with us, for us, meant changing the rules of how things are built, how things are done. And we actually had to become the contractors of the work in order to be able to realize it. Something that was a very tough decision to make, but really transformed the way in which we've been operating as architects ever since. So since this work, we changed or assumed different hats. This is the Merescopian House, which is the first project where, on top of being the contractors, we become the clients. Again, to be able to develop certain ideas that maybe with a different client would have been more complicated to do. This is a project of a house. It's our house in Madrid, where we are using Here again, we wanted to recycle, in this case, highway beams to turn them into the structure of a domestic space. And in this case, what was something that we were very intrigued about was how can we take standard products, standard parts, to make a non-standard piece of architecture. At this point, we didn't know how relevant this topic would become in our practice, but ever since we've built this house, we've been transferring this idea and reworking it through a variety of projects. So today I don't really want to talk about the specifics of each project, but really these themes, these ideas that for us are very relevant, that helps us to contribute through architecture to the discussion on urgent matters like industrialization of architecture. Also for this project, it has evolved into how to work on affordable housing without sacrificing the quality. And so these projects of houses, and I will show a few that we did early on in our practice, have been really relevant to test out ideas, to explore as architects how we want to contribute to our field, and then be able to continue to develop these same ideas through other projects for other clients, but having, in a way, cleared some of the uncertainties. So in this case, you can see how we are taking very big beams of different sizes. We chose them from a catalog, civil engineering, precast concrete parts, and we just give them a different meaning, a different function to create not just the structure of the house, but really defined the spaces. And what we are learning with this house also is how, for us, designing architecture is not just about designing space and a program, but really developing a structure that is coherent with that idea of a space and a program, and designing the whole construction process as well. This is why also today I will talk a lot and I will show a lot about these processes, because for us it's as important what we build as how we are building it, and how the construction methods, the construction orchestration is really contributing to the idea of the space. You were seeing there Anton, one of my partners, and this house that we live in it and we experience it, and it's again contributing to this larger idea that we continue to develop on how can we make something unique with parts that are standard. So for us, the house, it's a perfect scale to experiment, to take certain risks that we feel are very important if we want to innovate, if we want to push architecture or move it in a different path. And you will see now how these works that we do on our own initiative are really relevant for projects that then we do for other clients. In this case, let me lower the volume a little bit. In this case, it's the slaughterhouse in Madrid. It's a historic complex that has been transformed into a cultural center. And we were working in 4 of the warehouses. There was a competition that was done, and we got invited. And we won the competition to transform some of these warehouses into a cultural center, sort of a media tech. As I mentioned, the building is existing, it's historic, it was very well done, and we, in a way, departed from this industrial logic of the building to propose the new spaces and the transformation. The client wanted to create new spaces, new levels inside the building that you will see has a basilical section, very beautiful brick structure in the enclosure, and very delicate metallic structure inside. We wanted to be able to create this new level, but without sacrificing the kind of spatial quality of the complex. So we decided to, with a very simple idea, was to follow this order and introduce the new spaces as bridges that would actually bridge to independent warehouses, and that would be supported on the windows of the existing historic walls. So in a way, these bridges would be floating in space. We would prefabricate them and just bring it and thread them through the windows to avoid as much as possible the on-site construction that was very aggressive to the historic building. What you see here as a kind of very smooth dance took months and months to engineer, to convince the historic commission that this was a very safe maneuver, and in a way, something that we learned is that when you prefabricate, you have to really expend an extra time in really figuring out how things are going to play out on the site, because it's much harder to improvise once everything arrives. Let's say the assembly becomes much quicker, and there are a lot of benefits to this approach, but it's much less flexible to changes and to mistakes. But here again, like we were doing in the Maroscopian house, we're using this one single element. We are trying to make the construction much more efficient and controlled by making part of the building off-site. And we're also introducing these very heavy parts that continue with the industrial language of the place in a more contemporary way, but that contribute to actually create a very kind of light, open space, because these bridges, they seem to be floating in the space. And so this is, again, an evolution of this investigation, this research that we are doing through different projects on how to introduce industrialized parts and construction methods. Now I'll show a different house in the landscape. Again, kind of house as an experiment, as a laboratory. In this case, a very different site condition. The idea here was we wanted to test how we can build in the landscape and how we can build an architecture that will belong to the landscape once it's built almost. So an architecture that is not, let's say, afraid of change, that accepts change, that accepts nature to take over, very much like the megalithic constructions and the different castros and dolmens that exist in the area. that lost their purpose, and now nature took over and are part of the landscapes. So we wanted to see if we could create this kind of artificial landscape as architecture, and the way to do it was really to use as much as possible all the materials around, very few means, and we were carving the ground, using it as mold. We were using the hay bales of our neighbor. We were using concrete from the local concrete plant to consolidate earth and rocks and vegetation and create the structure in between the soil and the hay bales. And with the hay bales, we were building the internal space that then we would remove to discover it. The project here, very differently to the Hemeroscopion house or the project I showed before of the Reader's House, where everything needs to be absolutely controlled. This is about relinquishing control. This is about almost defining a project like a recipe and then implementing it on site as a performance that would never be the same if we did it a second time. So here we were very interested in exploring this architecture in connection with the landscape, as much as this process of design and construction, where as architects we were not forced to make every single decision, and where we were not even in control fully of the outcome. Actually, this was one of the most exciting but frightening moments of the project, where we, when we removed the hay bales and the soil and we discovered the architecture that we had built. We didn't know if it would be a complete disaster or if it would be a place that we would be able to inhabit. And once more, like the Hemeroscopion house I was showing before, this has been a project that has planted the seed of our research that we continue to do today. This is Paulina, or the neighbor cow, that was supposed to eat all the hay bales and help us define or discover the space that was inside. A lot of people ask me if she really ate all that hay bale in contact with the concrete, and I can answer that later if you are interested. But so in a way, this movie is also about a story, a fiction of an architecture that is not subjected to a lot of the constraints, the times, the efficiencies, the norms that we have to deal with today, and that is actually very liberating. When we excavated the space inside, we also discovered things that we might have an intuition could happen, but that we didn't fully know how they would result, like the texture of the concrete pressing against the hay bales that were creating this kind of liquid ceiling on the top, or against the walls that would create also, like we see here, this kind of melting with the place that has become even more intensive after the years where the grass and the plants and the seeds have started to take over. So what's important for us in this project is this idea of the question of architecture and time, architecture and nature, and how much architecture controls nature, or how much at some point you understand and accept a certain environment and allow architecture to be subject to change. There's also a question, a conversation about comfort that is very interesting and important to us, that you will also see in the last project I will present today. So this project is meant to be just a room to look at the sea, to have a very small shelter with a small shower, with a small fire to cook, just the very place to sleep, the very basics that can exist in its place without overwhelming it. And as the project of the Meriscopian house that evolved into other projects, we got the opportunity to build another very interesting project in a remote landscape in Montana, Tibet Rice Art Center. The client contacted us because they had seen some of the projects we had built in Galicia, the truffle, or the first project I was seeing with the big stones, and they wanted us to interpret the place. They wanted to build an art center in this beautiful landscape close to Yellowstone Park. But they didn't want a white box museum. They wanted something that would invite visitors to experience and explore the land, that would connect them with the environment, that would not seal them off. And so we started also with our background, our experience, and but understanding the place where we were operating, we decided to design this art center as a constellation, as a way of rooms fragmented and spread across the land. These would be open rooms where really visitors would need to take the time to go from one place to another. We designed almost like a series of them that responded to different situations on the site. The processes of construction also had to do with treating the land, using the land as support, as a structure, looking at also how land is formed, geological processes of erosion, of sedimentation, or on the lower right end, even we were designing projects through explosions, and how, combining energies and matter, we could create these places in the land. Again, in different moments. Some were bridges, other were water fountains, or just places on the top of the hills to gather cantilevered viewpoints. In this case, there was a larger theater, because the program was to make these rooms also places where different artworks could be displayed, and also where music performances could happen. The client ended up choosing 3 of them that we built on the site, and then they collaborated with different artists that completed the master plan. So you can see here some similarities to how we dealt and how we built the truffle, how we used the land and the ground as much as possible in our favor to cast these big rooms as big rocks that are going to be able to withstand the very extreme weather in this place on Earth that has extreme sun, extreme snowstorms. And so these structures offer a shelter if you're walking and you're hiking in the area, but they also offer a place to have performances. They help to navigate the land. I will let you hear a bit of a performance under Domo, which is the bigger structure that we built, that works as an acoustic shell. So the way it is shaped, the textures of the wrinkled concrete, they help to move the sound in different ways depending on how it opens into the landscape. So something that was key to this project was that the architecture was able to exist on its own, that it wouldn't look like an empty building if it was not used, that it wouldn't require a lot of maintenance, as this is a very big, large plot of land. And so what we find interesting and keeps us thinking about this work is how it tries to challenge some of the categories that try to separate art from architecture, architecture from landscape. And here you can read the project as a piece of art in the landscape. You can read it as the landscape itself. At some point, these rocks could have existed, arrived here, like the Rocky Mountains. But they have the properties of architecture. They shelter you from the rain and the snow. You definitely feel a change of temperature when it's very hot outside. These big thermal masses protect you. And they also make the sound travel in ways that make them very fitting as kind of performance stages. And so, is this architecture? Is it not? I leave it up for discussion. But for us, this is, again, when we are building in this type of landscape of remote spaces, really learning from the land and maybe finding other forms, other ways of building architecture. It's something that we are very curious to continue exploring. Now, also a very different house. This one in Brookline, in Boston. About 12, 13 years ago, when we were doing this project in Montana, we moved to the US to be closer to the project and also to start a laboratory in MIT. And we wanted to continue this exploration on prefabrication, but knowing the limitations that weight has when you're trying to move things around, we started to look at very light materials like foam. And we started to build structures with foam that would be very easy to move around. Some structures like this one that we call the cubic igloo, where, big volumes, almost emulating these big rocks that we had previously worked with. And, but also doing also more linear elements like we see here, again, emulating some of the concrete beams that we had used in the Maroscopian house, but removing most of the weight, changing the concrete for the foam and leaving some steel reinforcement that would help the structural performance. This is a structure done within the limits of a laboratory. It wouldn't be legal to build because of foam not being a very good material for fire, in terms of fire performance. But structurally, it actually performed really surprisingly well. As we were doing this research, we were immediately thinking how to apply it. We like to research, but we like to research and test. We don't like to stay in the lab too long. And so we needed a house in Brookline. We had and have a big family, 4 kids, and we needed to be in a place with good public schools. So we found the ugliest, cheapest property in a neighborhood with very good public schools, and we decided to buy it, already thinking about how this could be transformed. So we took this garage, we renovated it very quickly to turn it into a house where we could all fit, and then started to permit and design the project of building on top of this warehouse an extension for the house. This extension had to be very light so that we could use the existing building as the foundation without the need to spend additional money on it. Very soon it became clear we couldn't use a local contractor because it was super expensive to build and we couldn't afford it. And also we wanted to apply some of the research, so we decided to build it in Madrid, where we had our team, where we could rent this kind of warehouse very cheaply. And we prefabricated the house in big parts. The bigger they could fit the container, that would also fit the footprint of the existing building in Brookline, and trying to optimize the volume of the container to minimize the number of containers, but in a way the container was a dimension we needed to deal with. So we brought the house in parts. Here again, the timing, the control of all the process was really critical. We had no place to store these parts, so we had to time the containers in order to, as they were arriving, we were craning, we were placing. So again, the construction was super quick, super efficient, but very stressful in the sense that it really had to work. Once on site, it would have been really, not very difficult to make the changes, but much more expensive. So here we are, again, testing some things that we have tested before, but also some new ones. We are inheriting the 4x8 module that governs a lot of the construction here in the States. We are also learning from light construction, but adapting some of the technology. And we continue to build on this idea of how we can prefabricate a home in an affordable way, but that doesn't compromise the quality and the ambition of the space, of the architecture. So this is our own story, coming to the US as a kind of a middle-income family, struggling to build a house at an affordable price. We could do it because we have other resources, because we know how to build. We don't need to pay architect, fabricator. We just had to hire a contractor for the rigging. But we know the struggles that a lot of families have, and how it becomes increasingly difficult in cities like Boston. I heard that Raleigh is also, prices are going up. So this investigation on the home, on our own homes, has really built an interest in thinking how we can contribute to the larger conversation and needs about housing and affordable housing and housing with good quality. The next step, as we were becoming contractors but also fabricators, was to build our own factory space in Madrid, and we built it after building the house in Brookline, again testing some prefabrication systems, and we have ever since continued to work on developing a system for industrialized housing that can be applied at a larger scale, where we think about the house in components that can be assembled quickly, that can be prefabricated, that can be shipped long distances, and that, as we were doing in the origins with the Homoloscopion house, think about standard parts that can build non-standard buildings. I think this is the big challenge of industrialization today, and why is it so relevant that architects contribute to the discussion versus leaving this task just to other professionals that maybe lack the sensibility or the creativity. Of course, this is an effort that brings together engineers, architects, manufacturers of very different kinds. We've been iterating the materials, the systems from concrete, steel, CLT to try to minimize the ecological footprint. And we've created a startup called WOHO, World Homes, that has this huge ambition. Of course, the first question that a developer will ask is like, how many multifamily buildings have you built? No, and this is where we hit the wall, but we are there. We think we can contribute to making this possible. We are now building our first super small 5-unit building in a low-income neighborhood in Madrid, and hopefully that will serve as the proof of concept to maybe bring developers in and help us build another building. So, yeah, a very complicated but a relevant a topic that we are dealing with. Now, showing one of our latest projects, a project that we are building in South Korea at the moment. This one in a very beautiful landscape. It's the visitor center for a museum of gardens close to Seoul. And here the idea is to, as this is a building where people are going to go through in order to enter paradise, the idea is that as they go through the building, they forget the city and they are already entering the landscape. So you can see a lot of the ideas that were sparked with the truffle, with the project in Montana. We are developing here. We are now at the point of talking with the contractors, seeing how they can how they can build it, and of course with all the issues and all the problems. So at the time that we are developing the project, we are building some prototypes. In this case, this is a prototype of formwork, a very lightweight formwork to cast this structure that then we can manufacture ourselves in our lab, that we can transport. In this case, we are transporting it temporarily to an exhibition, but This was to show the client how we could transport it to Seoul, assemble it, and then have the structure casted. We're not sure if they're going to go with this idea, honestly, but we did the full job of then spraying all the structure on top of the mold, doing all the reinforcement. This is a tiny pixel of the full building, but very representative to show the contractor all the different steps to build the structure, and also to avoid the typical comments of this cannot be done, which are very reasonable, by the way. So here you can see how that translates into the building that has this ground level very open in connection with the landscape, but differently to the project of structures of landscape. Here it's more of a finished building with its facades and its systems. You can imagine the conversation of where to place the detectors and the sprinklers in this structure right now. And then it has a basement where we create this light wall that, again, we are here prototyping in our lab, where we are creating resin wall, almost like something hybrid between an art piece and a partition wall that will be retroilluminated, that will represent also different types of gardens in a more abstract way, and that we can fabricate, we can roll, and we can ship to Korea. And again, this is something that we're now in the beginning of its development. We're very interested in these kind of composite materials, their translucent quality, how they can have this hybrid nature between being an artwork and a piece of architecture or a piece of landscape. And we are using also this project to test it. And so now we are, again, in the process of finalizing some of these prototypes, but the excavation of the site is happening, and so hopefully will be built sometime soon. So the last project I want to show you kind of brings together many of the ideas I was presenting to you through the lecture. We also go back to the origin. This is a project we're doing in a quarry. In this case, it's an abandoned quarry in the island of Menorca that was exploited for some time. Then it was used during the Spanish Civil War as a place to store ammunition, to have the military camp, and then it was abandoned. There are different places like this one in the island that are left to decay, where it's not clear what you can legally do with them. There's a lot of, let's say, there's a lot of fear on what to do with these structures, if they're stable, if they're not stable. And so we found this place, we 3D scanned it fully. We found an incredible industrial structure that was never carved to be architecture, but that has incredible architectural qualities. So in a way, we found a place that we would have liked to design ourselves, but that was there, no? And we felt that our role was to discover it and use it as a case study for how to repurpose some of these industrial spaces that surround us, that once they feel or they fulfill their kind of economic mission, they are left abandoned but have great value if they can be reimagined. So the way to transform it was really to clean it, was to introduce light and air in the darkest corners using the techniques that built this space in the first place. And adding very few other elements. Really, it's about understanding how we can work with this big thermal mass, how we can move around light and air, how we can domesticate slightly the space, but not too much that it can lose the character that it has. And it is, again, for us, a laboratory on the very basic elements of architecture. No? One of the first lessons we received was how, when we cleaned the stone, the light was bouncing in an incredible way, and the light levels were coming up without the need to even introduce any additional light. No? And then we're reading the architecture, finding which places make sense for cooking, for sleeping, for working, and also moving around in different times of the year, because in the winter you want to be closer to the light, to the facade. In the summer you want to hide in the deeper parts of the quarry. So it is a place where we try to spend time that we modify very little by little. We've introduced these very light facades that will protect it from getting additional dust inside, and that we use as a way to understand also a different way to be in the environment, where we don't need maybe to achieve the levels of extreme comfort that sometimes it's even uncomfortable, that we force into our buildings, and seeing how we can understand the environment better, maybe use energy. In this case, it's fully autonomous, powered with solar light, how we can use what is around, what is available, and also put ourselves in the situation of living like that. So again, this project for us is says a lot about how we like to operate as architects, how we think we can contribute. No? We believe that architects, we have this potential to see things maybe that, or imagine things, imagine environments, futures that enhance what we already have. And it just requires, I think, sometimes getting out of our comfort zone to test things out, find the allies to make that work. And we don't need to make huge or access huge projects from the start to make big statements and to make an impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Débora, for that. That was incredible. It's always great to have the opportunity to see things done in a different way, for investigations to happen that aren't exactly expected or are certainly out of place in Raleigh, North Carolina. So really, again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have some time for questions, so if anyone wants to lead us off, guinea pig alert. Yeah, Carlos.
Thank you. I have a question. So it seems like a lot of your work, it's kind of opposite in a way. A lot of it is working additively, right? Like with like all of these industrial prefab materials, or like walls, sections. And then the other half of it seems to be very subtractive, right? You're like taken away from the ground, sort of already like using these spaces that already exist. Do you see, and I'm sure you do, but how do you see those interacting with each other? How do they inform the practice of the other, right? Because I feel like it's very opposite ways of constructing. And how do you see these maybe sort of coming together or maybe not, right?
Yeah. Yes, these are definitely two lines of research that start with very early works that I showed. The Hemeroscopion house triggered all this investigation about prefabrication or industrialization, how to take either existing parts or design standard parts that then can build different or more unique buildings. And the other one has to do more with, let's say, the rural world and landscapes and how to build architectures within them that, again, have this hybrid condition between being a building and being part of the land, no? So that, in a way, challenge some of the rules of how architecture is built, is designed, is experienced. So these are born from different contexts, very different needs. We continue to investigate them as we encounter contexts that are more fitting to continue one research or another. We think that both are kind of very fruitful and very relevant at different scales. So if we think about for instance, the need for housing and building affordable housing. And we think about the volumes in which housing is built, and we think about the issues that we have with the construction industry, that it's so polluting and so inefficient. You know, clearly that line of investigation serves that, let's say, issue, no, that problem. How they come together, they do come together from time to time. So for instance, in the project in Korea that has to do with responding to this landscape, we're already prefabricating certain parts to make it happen. No? So how can we prefabricate the mold and bring it here? How can we prefabricate some of the light wall systems that we're creating and bring it here? But this is not something forced. It's something that it's just part of our experience, and whenever it becomes handy, we know different ways of building, and we try to find the best way for the project, whether that is bringing everything from outside, using all the local resources, or something in between. And then also in our research in prefabrication, now that we are building some of these components that come together to produce a building, we are also thinking a lot about how we can make certain parts, like for instance a slab, no? Does the slab need to be, kind of fully flat, soulless material, or can we also explore materiality in a different ways, like we do when we are building these other more sculptural projects? How can we bring that also more artistic maybe approach to prefabricated and industrialized parts? So I think there's definitely kind of merging or of certain elements, but that have to do with a sensibility that is shared. No? We love art. We are very interested in technology and thinking projects also through technology. And in every project, we're always trying to bring those together.
Another question?
Happy Monday, everyone. It's another amazing day in paradise. My superhero name is Mama Kai. Thank you so much for, just everything about this presentation, from the music to the content, was so enlightening. And it just had me thinking about how you bring all those things into Raleigh. I feel like we become that, we've kind of become cookie cutter with all the development that's gone on. And so everything is multi-story and increasing density, but we're losing the character. And I love how you've taken nature and let it be the character, be the main character. And so as I was thinking about this, I was thinking about the elements that you were talking about, architecture, art, nature. And because of the challenges that we are facing here in North Carolina, in Raleigh in particular, with crime and suicide among our youth, I was curious as to how you would see the potential of youth participating and creating, you know, these types of experiences, because that's really what they are. That's like really what was on my mind, because I was so impressed by the kids and how, you know, they found the soft spaces, but they were playing on the hard spaces, you know, and found that balance. And so that's really what came to my mind. What do you see, how do you see youth participating in something like this?
I mean, as an architect, you always want your architecture to very positively contribute to the communities where, you know, they are. It's not something that you can force. You know, buildings in the end respond however people decide they're going to respond, or how they want to use it, and many times it's not really how you planned it. But I definitely believe in the power of architecture to create places, and places that are not just functional, but are inspiring, and are engaging, and are welcoming. And what we found with some of these buildings that are materially very rich, that are very imperfect also, because, you know, we're really not looking for perfection here. We're not looking for the perfect cut, the perfect polish, the perfect, and I think these imperfection makes people more excited and more willing to touch and to, you know, less afraid to keep it intact. No? And I think this is very important in general. We are too obsessed with perfection, and perfection requires so much energy and doesn't really add a lot of value. If we think about an industrial process of cutting a rock, there's so much energy employed in making that irregular mountain into a perfect, thinly cut stone. And you could stop that process very early on and get a much more exciting, interesting material. No? So there's something that I think architecture can do for all of us. When you go to, you know, your house might not be the best house in the world, but if you have a public library that you can go to, a public park, a museum, no? Like we went to today to the art museum that I learned is fully open for everybody and free. That's already something that is, I think, transformative in somebody's life, if you can get access to good architecture and good public spaces. But then I also think that the making, the doing is so important. We are moving towards a society that is very much about observing. We think that we are able to learn by seeing things, but we learn so much more by actually engaging and doing. So I think that not just for the younger people, but of course, but for all of us, no? It's so important to participate in things, not as spectators, but really do that trip, no? Not just watch a documentary online, no? Cook that recipe and go and play that sport and go and make that or build that shed in your yard or repair your motorcycle, whatever. I think the hands-on is therapeutical. in a way. I think we should all do more of that. I mean, maybe it's also because I like making things, but I do feel it in myself. Like when I have a week when I'm mostly responding to emails, doing administrative work, my mood changes. When I'm doing a model, when I'm making something, suddenly it's like time disappears. And I think that is not just for young people, but also very especially, it's something that we should probably go back to. You're welcome. Thank you for the question. That was a good one.
Thank you again. Thank you again very much for this. This is really a great lecture and so much that we need to hear. And I love the way, I've never seen someone just do a movie scenario to where you talk through it. Brilliant idea, because I know how long it's going to be. You're not going to ramble on forever and ever.
I know. Makes people comfortable that it comes to an end.
Yeah, I love the fact that you were the music to the words. I really want to iterate how well you said about the doing process. The Confucius saying of, I hear, I forget, I see, I remember, I do, and I understand. Can you talk about the percentage of screen time you put into screen time versus making versus model building versus just crafting things, the creative process and the varieties of different things and tools that you use, because I think so much of where architecture is now is in screen time, and we're lemmings to it. And we've lost the leadership ability to kind of go out and control it versus it controlling us as a profession. And what you're doing means so much to bring us out of that mindset.
But the fact is that we don't know, or I don't know how to build drawing in the computer. I don't know, and I don't want to know. But I don't think that's the only way of, there are some people who are great painting, others that are great making stuff, others that are actually great using certain softwares. Now with AI, forget it. We need to, really rethink what our job is. But I do believe that in the AI conversation, for architects, knowing about construction and makings becomes even more relevant, because very soon we will have a client that will come with a project and will say, hey, my 10-year-old son did this script in Prometheus or whatever software, and this is the house I want. No? And there will be architects who will serve that mission, or that will use AI to design whatever. So, but for us, we like making. That's how we think. That's how we have evolved as architects, where for us the model helps us to understand matter from the beginning, and structure and space. And it's also, when we're doing the model, we're already thinking about or designing the construction process in a very sketchy way in the beginning, but it's already starting to be there. So the model is the first thing that we do after we've visited a site. We've learned about what needs to be done, what are the resources available in the area. We go on to brainstorming with the model. And then the way in which we transfer that model into a digital model, we try to make that as efficient as possible. So if we can 3D scan the model, that becomes the digital, perfect. Sometimes it doesn't work so easy, but we try to be very efficient and to spend the least amount of time doing work that does not really add much value. But of course, the digital model is important. We work in Revit because we want to integrate structure and all the mechanical systems and all the finishes and everything. We always design thinking about the construction, so we want the construction to be good. And we use also the digital tools that are available to collaborate with the engineers, to license the projects, and so on. Whenever we can skip that part, for instance, when we've done the truffle, we didn't need to do the types of documents that you would do for other types of project. But for the project in Korea, we are working with a local architect and a contractor, and of course you have to go through all of that. But for us, we depart from the model, and then we go back to the model at different stages. I've shown you a lot of prototypes, which are super important to design, to validate certain solutions, and sometimes to get others convinced that it's possible. So for the project in Korea, we've done a lot of prototypes, so almost as tutorial to show step by step how it can be done, and get others comfortable with that. So we carry the model or the making all throughout, and then combine it with the digital as necessary.
Hi, Débora. Thank you very much for your presentation. For me, it's a great pleasure to finally see you talking about your work. And first of all, I think I should congratulate you in the courage that the work have, that every project, it's a new research, it's a new step into the unknown, and how brilliant and how beautiful you and Tone in the studio found out solutions, always connected to the making, right? So I think it's just wonderful and super exciting. And my question I ask you to comment a little bit in the relationship between the studio and your role and Anton's role as a professor, how it's connected or not, because part of the project looks like it was a project in MIT, right? And how these two things are connected, because I think as you're doing research, right,
Mm-hmm.
probably it makes a lot of sense to understand a little bit more about that. Thank you.
So yes, when we do have these three legs of practice, research, and teaching, very connected. We like to teach what we do because we don't know how to do it otherwise, and also because we, with our own experience, we feel that we're constantly learning as well. So we, at least when we find something that works, we like to share it with the students, whether that is a process of thinking, and when we do teach a studio, there's a lot of hands-on from the beginning. Sometimes even there's no computer until week 5, and they have to be designing by making, and there's a lot of material exploration. So from that part to also maybe showing very basic tools that have been super practical for us, like 3D scanning a model, or using AI software to very quickly create renders that you don't need to pay $3,000 to somebody to do, or that you can use in order to imagine different scenarios for your building, But where you're using AI from your own model, from your own work, and not making AI do the work for you, So we try to teach a lot about different softwares and tools that you can use at the service of your ideas and architecture, and not have them control you, So there's a lot of what we've learned and what we do that we apply. We also present as studio topics things that we are interested in. So my last studio was called House as Product. So the students were investigating, again, this idea of how can we think about the house as an industrial product, but still keep all the values that house needs to have, no? That can be customized, that that can culturally fit in a context, etc. No? So I like to propose the topics that are on our table that we're excited about. Of course, our work serves as reference, but then the students are able to take it, no, in their own direction, and that's always very enriching for everybody. And the research, we do a lot of research in-house, and we have done certain research with MIT that, in a way, culminated in the creation of this startup, WOHO, that MIT helped to fund, and so then it took like a different form now that that we continue to work on. No? So I think there are research that we feel more comfortable doing in-house because it's maybe more personal or more connected to the Ensamble practice, but there are other projects that we think are larger than our own practice that need institutions to support it, and then we find a way to make them happen.
I think we have time for one more. Going once, going twice. Débora, thank you so much. Can we get one more round of applause?
Thank you.
So I'd be remiss if I let you leave without recognizing our cohort. We want to recognize the 13 folks that have come from across the country to study Raleigh with us for 2 weeks and propose what-if solutions for the city. So please, one more night, stand up. You've only got one more night of this. So can you give them a round of applause? In addition to packing the seats every night for us and making us look great on the live stream, which we appreciate that, they've done just a wonderful, inspiring job of unearthing some of the potential that our city has right in front of us, things that we overlook with our own biases every day. So we really appreciate that. We hope that you get something out of the workshop this year, but just know that your effect and kind of impact on the future of our city is really valuable and important to us, so thank you. Tomorrow is the last night of the Real Matter Lecture Series for 2024. I hope that you all can make it out one more time. We'll have the music going. We'll have the beer. If you have a ticket, Gustavo's in the audience, or maybe he disappeared now. He asked the last question. Maybe he was trying to hide. He will be watching, so come back. Hope to see you tomorrow. Thanks so much. Have a great night.